Ready?
I'm ready.
So, as I'm looking at this mobile you've created, my first question to you is, what was your starting point?
My starting point was the steel frame. It's not made of steel, but that's the the basic structure that comes down and forms like a T, but um, not a complete lowercase t.
So, in you saying that, what I notice is the heaviness and the constriction is totally in the top 5 inches of the creation.
Yeah.
And so, talk to me about how and why it gets lighter and lighter as it goes deeper.
I don't know that I was thinking about that when I made it, and I hadn't actually considered that until you just noticed it. Um, but I can relate to what you're saying, in that my symptoms, the the pain that I feel at the top of my head on the left side, behind my eye, through that shoulder, that soft shoulder spot on my left side, um, in my in my throat, the tightness, the symptoms are heavier up top,
Mm.
and not so much, really below diaphragm. If that is my body.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me, that crystal that's right under the horizontal piece, what is that to you? And what does that represent in the piece overall?
So so it's selenite, and
Mm-hmm.
selenite is, in my world and what I've learned about it, is it's a pretty fragile stone. In fact, if it gets wet, it can dissolve. But it's also high vibration, and there's something about invoking water
Mm.
with selenite
Mm-hmm.
that I know about, just tangentially, not deeply. And I always love that selenite in the mobile pieces because it feels really ethereal, or spirit, kind of essence um, of me, of soul, and that's just always present, regardless of uh, the heaviness, or anything that would overshadow it.
As I look at the piece of wood and look at the selenite, the wraps of each are totally different. Was it purposeful or intuitive or
Yeah,
utilitarian?
it was definitely intuitive, and you know I don't know that, again, until you're asking right now, I don't know that I had considered how differently they were wrapped. um, there just feels like there's something more elegant and of spirit related to the selenite,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the that particular piece of wood that I found, when we were on a hike in Colorado, just feels very earthbound. It
Mm-hmm.
feels more earthly.
And so the black that comes off the black spiral and wire that comes off the main center thread,
Hmm.
talk to me about that.
So that is the shadow. That
Mm.
is this unknown that for so long has been in the periphery,
Mm.
and that has been
Mm.
brought into center.
Mm-hmm. Is that further represented by the black bead?
So
Or talk to me about that.
so that's interesting. So that actually, I was contemplating that yesterday. I really put this whole thing together without a plan. Just I was just kind of pulling through, kind of like you do when you make your
Mm-hmm.
things. I have these little trays of various gemstones and beads, and I just decided this one was
Mm.
black and red, and so I pulled all of these. And yesterday I was looking at those, and they're lava rocks. They're so they're really light. I think they're made when a volcano erupts and there's gases, and so they get air in them, so they're real airy. And I was kind of reading about them yesterday, realizing, which I did not know, that they are about letting go of the past to be able to move forward. And right, and I thought that was really interesting. And so for me, they are what is generated, or is kind of this, it's the gem from the trauma. It's what it's the takeaway. It's what I offer myself and the world, because this has been brought fully into consciousness.
Um, Not to put words in your mouth or thoughts, but what I got when you were talking to me about how the lava rock is formed with the air, and it's like it creates space.
Oh, I love that.
For you from the experiences in the past, the trauma in the past. It provides space that holds you while you do further exploration and healing on your way to healing.
I hadn't gone there, but I love that, and I think that that's why when we make these things, these pieces, they're not for us, they're for all of us. And I love that. That feels like another layer of compassion, because space, I used to feel really trapped in my body, like my physical body was too small, and I haven't felt that way in a while now. And so knowing the spaciousness that's available is a huge resource.
And talk to me about the feather.
So that was kind of a last minute ad. Honestly, at first it was mostly for balance of the piece, because I felt like it added something aesthetically that was just needed, and I knew it had to be a feather. While this structure that sits inside of my body is loosening, it is still there, and so the feather is about this continued possibility of freedom, of more movement. And I happen to have a red and black feather hanging out, so it kind of worked out.
And tell me what's the significance of red and black?
So certainly the black is the shadow, in contrast with the white selenite of that essence. And the black belongs to that essence. Now that tension of the paradox is able to be held here in balance. And the red glass beads and the red on the feather, I liked the aesthetic to it as well, because it's not just black and white. There's a lot of other things going on, and the red felt like, I don't know if I feel like this as much with the feather, but for the beads, it feels like this inner fire that is not going to be put out. And maybe even part of what helps create that space, that inner volcano.
I love that. And what about the anchor? Its anchor and the wrap. The what appears to be a obvious purposeful wrap to the anchor.
So, that earth energy and that sky energy, and that as above, so below. I feel like it's the other opposing pieces that we really need for balance. And really, now that I'm talking to you about it, it's kind of, when we move, if we're out of balance, we fall. And so thinking about these mobiles as both movement and balance, something about movement and balance.
Well, it's a coordinated dance.
Mm. When we bring it all in, it
Mhm.
sure is.
When you look at it now as we talk, what do you feel?
I think it feels true, and it feels like the best description of what sometimes is hard to make with words, um, or make others see with words. It feels like if I had to go, if I didn't know any of the things I know now, and I had to walk into some physician's office, I could say, this is what's sitting in my body. This is where I am. This is what it feels like on the inside. That is both fragile and strong at the same time.
And you say that, this is my word, the confinement in your body with that structure, that almost cross-like structure, is loosening.
It is loosening. It is loosening. It's definitely loosening. I can even feel, just since we've been speaking, what started out as tight in my neck is loosening. It's being heard.
Does it feel hopeful?
It does feel hopeful. It feels also like this. I feel a curiosity for this journey. I don't feel afraid of this journey. I think I spent so long in a freeze state and afraid of these shadows that I knew were there. And now I just feel curiosity most all the time about it.
Is there any element on this piece that represents courage?
That's a great question. You know, I think what I'm feeling is the response to that question is it's the acknowledgement of both, and all of the opposing forces that are here in one space feels like courage, because I'm not excluding some piece of myself. I'm not what happened to me, but it is part of me. And I think, actually, I don't know that I think that, so the piece of wood at the top is really interesting. I found it at the end of a walk or a hike we took. We had just come to the base of this beautiful waterfall, and we're starting to head home, and I was with my husband. It was just the two of us that morning, and I had one of those days where I just needed to cry, and so I was kind of like a waterfall for a little while, and then I looked down and I found this piece of wood, and this piece of wood it looks like it used to be inside of a tree trunk, right? So it's like the joint that connected a branch. And so I think in part that feels courageous because I'm taking something from our family tree and I'm talking about it and I'm changing it. And I'm changing that for everyone, forward and backward, generationally. Whether this is an explicit conversation or just my own healing, I've already seen how it has impacted my children and my family.
One thing that I get from what you just said, and then glancing up and seeing the feather and the degree of movement that it has. So you are giving this generational thread wings to go forward and back with healing.
Hmm. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fascinating.
For me too.